Good afternoon, dear friends, dear Yurii Mykolaievich. So you're here with us again in Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Today we have an unusual event. But we're not going to give out all the secrets right away, even though it was already announced that today we're going to have presentation of your new book. But I would like ours to start with the format of geopolitical dialogues, same as we already had in 2023, and a lot of your prognoses already were fulfilled. So, we are going to have discussion, and after that we talk about your book. Some aspects of this discussion will actually be connected to this book and your previous books, but not only. So I'm very happy to greet our famous Ukrainian, for me, first of all, diplomat, because the work, you not only worked as an ambassador of Ukraine in US, Israel, Canada, and also a foreign policy. That's, that was always connected with history, with other spheres. But now I would like us to talk about geopolitical aspect. I know that lately, well, as always, but especially lately, you have an opportunity to look at the events in Ukraine. Well, not from this side. Well, I know that you're located in Norway, your children live there, and you spend much time with them, but also from Poland. And, maybe from the point of view of your wisdom, your experience, you would be able to give your evaluation. Because lately in Ukraine, we keep asking the same questions. And I ask those questions as well, and sometimes I answer them. Here in Ukrainian Crisis Center, we had a lot of dialogues with famous Ukrainian diplomats, your colleagues. But there are no answers to these questions for now. And of course, I do not expect ours to give those answers today. But I think that your prognosis were the closest. Like at that time, we couldn't imagine that situation. So not even the war itself and the length of the war. And we have a lot of conversations about possible Third World War. So the question, how the war is going to end, when the war is going to end, or what is just peace for Ukraine. I will not ask certain questions now, even though, we could. But my first question will be connected to the ending of our previous conversation that was received with a lot of attention, not just in Ukraine, but also those versions of international translation are when ambassadors of other countries met me, so they also asked me about that, our conversation with you. So the question is where we are now. From the point of view of, from the point of view of a possible Third World War, so in what point Russian-Ukrainian war and Ukraine are now? Thank you so much. First of all, greetings, dear friends. I'm so happy that we have this opportunity to continue this conversation with Valeriy Alexeyevich Chaly, and I appreciate it, I value it, because for me, it's like a fresh breath, a lot of new ideas, new thoughts come up. And that the conversation that we had back in 2023, and actually after that I started to write this book, and first of all, I wanted to mention that it is very difficult to be Cassandra. Cassandra is not loved because they say very unpleasant things. And to take on the role of Cassandra, well, for example, for us, Cassandra, number one in Ukraine is Vitaly Portnikov. So I wouldn't dare to take on that role, but the questions demand are the answers. That was first. Number two, the world. Right now, as a world, we are now in the most tragic period of world history of humanity, not even Ukraine only, but history of human civilization, because in front of us we see that the whole world that was established before, after the Second World War, it's collapsing now right in front of right in our eyes. So that world established after Second World War does not exist any longer and will not exist. So, in our eyes now, the Ukrainian stateness or nationhood that was established in 1991, I would say, kind of first statehood, also collapsed now. I think that was successful, but for us now, we have to start thinking about building Ukrainian statehood number two. Well, I speak about it in this book, and this is a great choice for us. So this world is on fire because all those institutions, global institutions, such as United Nations, such as International Monetary Foundation, World Bank, and this financial system that was established after Second World War, all of them, they experience huge crisis now, and the world is dividing into two blocks. So the United States is kind of on top. Like in the previous world, United States, they were like leading that democratic bloc, and that gave us some peace of mind. Now, so the role of United States changing, and some absolutely new geopolitical composition is getting established now. And number four, I think. So we are getting closer and closer to the past. And this is very symbolic because actually geopolitical tendencies have to return to the past. So this is the law of dialectics. Yes, exactly. The new cycle starts. And Russia, that was established not by Peter I from my point of view, but by Ivan Grozny. So that Ivan the formidable, so that crazy monarch who raped, from my point of view, that poor Rus. So now Russia becomes a toxic center for the whole world. I would like to draw our attention. By the way, I speak about this in this book as well. So there was not axis of evil, as we used to say before. But now the continent of evil is getting established, and that's different things. If during the Second World War, so that was the right name, so axis of evil, so Germany, Japan, there was axis. But look what is happening now. Now Russia and China, they have huge mutual border and mutual space, and it cannot be controlled by anybody, and they can do whatever they want. So they can move their troops, and So and then, now North Korea joins China, and that is the same continent. And now Iran also joins. And we can mention some more countries that have tendency to join. So, and now they have their own, I would say, continent, have their own political interests, their ideology, and with all the differences, there is something that unites them. Those absolutely authoritarian countries, including China, and some of our naive theory, naive. Like theoreticians, they were greeting China, but I wasn't optimistic. I was a pessimist in that question because China had their own interests, so to possess specific region and give Russia possibility to destroy Europe and the institutions. And if to that continent of evil, maybe if not formal, but at least in fact, if USA will join them, that will be catastrophic. And the prognosis will be horrible. So you mean like the border? Well, yeah, there are different forms, in 4 years that Trump will spend in White House, it's not that big period of time to create a huge changes, but he doesn't want to spend there 4 years. He wants to spend there forever. And then if Vance will become president, it's a very dangerous personality, even a lot more dangerous than Trump. And all that today, it's under the question mark. So European countries are shocked. You see what is happening when they realize that that United States can just live on their own and work very fruitfully with Russia. And this is a huge danger. And if, I would try to answer your question where we are now. So if we remember the 20th century, I think that today we are not in the 20s, like 1920s, when Hitler was participating in meetings and when the parades started. So, and when that movement towards the Second World War started. But from my point of view, we are now sometime somewhere in 1938. So, and from my point of view, the Second World War started with aggression of Japan against China. Very often we forget about it because we have Europe-centric thinking. But just try to remember how brutal aggression that was from Japan against China. And then that was transferred to Spain, to Italy, and so on. And then Germany joined. From my point of view, world wars, both Second World War and now Third World War, they are like chain reactions as in a reactor. So they kind of cage those atoms and they develop not simultaneously, but even like during the Second World War on the 1st of September, 1939, that's a very conditional date because by that time Czechoslovakia was already occupied and that protest started and everyone actually already understood that the war have started. And now we are in this period. So this is a tremendously difficult period of time for Ukraine because we can lose, well, the same as Israel. Now they are losing United States. Maybe that is temporary. I don't fully believe that the United States will turn away from Israel completely, but it is very possible that they will turn with their back towards us and we will be left in a very difficult geopolitical situation together with Europe. Wow, you gave us such a broad picture of the situation, mentioned a lot of countries. So so you use such term as continent of evil, and this is very logical. I apologize. I would like some of our researchers to get interest in that continent of evil, to count. I did some calculations in my book, but just on surface. So to count human resources, material resources, interests, connections of countries, geopolitical interests, history, Ukrainian geopolitical professionals, we need to use this term, continent of evil. I apologize for interrupting you. Well, yeah, of course, yeah, you can speak freely like that, but it's not really allowed to speak on the official level like that. But Brzezinski and Kissinger, were they allowed by US to express their ideas? Well, obviously, we need to have people of the level of Kissinger, even though for me, Kissinger is not an ideal person. So methods that are suggested by Kissinger now, they are not really fitting from my point of view. I had an opportunity to ask him and his question to ask like something that they suggested for Ukraine in 2014 that was completely Russian approach. So they wanted to get to Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko and suggest for Ukraine to do something that is actually, still demanded from us, to just agree that Russia is great, that we need to share our territory, and so on. So unfortunately, I apologize. Fortunately, at that time, so we had a strong leadership in our country at that time. So the head of our state, invited me as. And I said, so those were Graham, Ryansky, Kissinger's team. And they said, I said, okay, what do you want? So they said, we want your president to agree, and then American president will be like a mediator for you and help to sign it with Russia. And I said, let your president sign it and show it to us. And then I go to my president. And then it ended at that point. So now, speaking of continent, then I have a logical question. So we see that they won this continent. I will use this term with your permission. They want to cover it from Arctic. So, but if we look at globe, we will see different picture. I think those who look at the map, at maps, it's pretty delusional. So I saw in Mexico they have different maps, so they are like America-centered. But so globe gives a lot better representation. So if that is a continent of evil, so we are a continent of good, like Europe, I would say, like a Black Sea region, also Western Europe, Canada. So that is a very friendly country. And well, United States, they can have different scenarios. But so we don't want to just skip fully, possible positive experience scenarios. Who knows? So now it's like our country is again in between those two continents. Before we used to be in between those military blocks, and now we have those continents. Now we are frontier again. And we're the country at the junction. So, and that's we have to be ready for war. So what role, Europe can play. So those 450 million and 500 million in general, can Europe become that pole of that world? If Europe will not become a pole, so then what is the destiny of Ukraine in this geopolitical situation? Well, I agree with you that Ukraine is a frontier. And unfortunately, so this destiny will be imposed on us in the future because so we have as a neighbor country an extremely toxic state. So we underestimated Russia. We knew it. We could love it or not love it, but our elite, our corrupted elite, and our oligarchs. So they wagered on Russia. So, but I'm not confident that next day, after the peace will be announced, so the good Russians will not appear here again, and all that company will not start working here, speaking about huge projects, investment, and so on. And that it will not be another attempt to repeat that scenario of Russian influence on Ukraine. But today we have a chance. We are state frontier. So I wrote about it many times that we need to adopt Israeli experience. Israeli, a country that fights, having an American machine gun in their hands. Those guys and girls, all of them, they go through military service. Until we do that, unfortunately, we will lose pretty often, unfortunately. So we need to think, in what way. Well, actually, that's pretty clear in what way. It was possible to impose on millions of people this ideology of huge hatred towards Ukrainians, supporting Putin. That's not just because he is from one side, so the one to blame, and he is guilty. But from the other side, he is the one who expresses interests of Russian nation. I remember Russia of 1942, 1944. My family was in evacuation, and there were a lot of good people who were supporting us, and I remember a lot of good things from those times. But my older brother, he was more conscious because he was 14 at that time. He was older, so he shared, and he actually wrote in his memories that even starting from 1942, there was a strong anti-Ukrainian moods coming from the Kremlin, that Ukrainians are betrayers because Ukrainian territory was occupied. So there were some roots, lack of trust to Maloros, as they called us. So some that also some disdain, so Vinnychenko and those before him, that cohort of Ukrainian National Republic, they were very right. They understood the essence of Russia, and they said, but nobody believed. So they spoke about the role that Russia played back then. Can you imagine what was that? The plunder of Ukrainian farmers in 1920s, when Stalin hated Ukrainians because Ukrainians refused to obey Lenin's decree. So we keep forgetting about these Ukrainian uprising against Russians. So we need to remember our policy. So, speaking of Europe, Europe is fragmented. I don't believe in unity of Europe. I do not believe. Well, now Macron declares something, but tomorrow he will be gone. He has very weak positions. What about Germany? Germany, well, my thought is until Germany will recover, and they already started to recover from the results of Second World War, until Germany will become strong, not just economic but military power, and they are starting to go there. So nothing will happen until then. But Poland tremendously fears such Germany because they are convinced that such Germany will be willing to get back those German lands that were given to Poland, and this is also a difficult problem. Speaking of today's union, today I see tremendous possibility for union, UK, Baltic countries, Ukraine, Poland, but unfortunately our political leadership lost Poland. You cannot imagine what is happening in Poland. So I monitor those Polish actions every single day. Yesterday I shared, and I will share with you now, it's absolutely horrible things. The day before yesterday, 2 days ago, on Poland TV, that was a video where 4 or 5 guys with balaclava stand. They speak in Ukrainian and they threaten Navrotsky, their presidential candidate. They threaten to kill him and his family. They say that we represent Ukrainian nation, we are many in Poland, and we will still reveal ourselves. That is a horrible provocation. And those language professionals analyzed the Ukrainian that this guy spoke. But unfortunately, I only heard Polish translation because I saw it on Polish TV. But they said that in that Ukrainian language, there is a lot of Russian influence. I don't know, I cannot say because I haven't heard, but I can easily assume that Russians, the Russians, they recruited those Ukrainians. So this is horrible. Also, some Ukrainian put on fire some storages under Warsaw, and he was recruited by Russians again. So again, we lost Poland. Well, that is not forever. It is temporary, but still, there are some normal politicians who understand. Now we don't know what's going to happen with Romania. So you saw the elections and the results. So we are surrounded with both sides, with, if not enemies, but then unfriendly to us countries. So please allow me to ask you a question. It's very important because borderline countries, it's important. So let's say open. So they had parade. Well, I haven't watched it, but what are you talking about? The parade, I don't know, Day of Europe or 9th of May or, well, of course, on the 9th of May. Of course, I'm joking because the whole world is celebrating the Victory Day in the Second World War on the 8th of March. But, and even Trump celebrates, on the 8th of March. So, and just Putin is left to celebrate on the 9th of March, where everyone celebrates Day of Europe. So Slovatsky was there, and he really wanted, and the Hungarian leader wanted to come, and Serbian leader was really trying hard to get there. So, and then he returned and he said, take us to Europe. So, do we need to mention that the one of the reasons of such approach was the position of some countries who were on the side of Hitler in the Second World War. And these countries, so they had their empire goals. I think Slovakia, Hungary, they wanted to get territories, and hundreds of thousands of Hungarians were under Stalingrad and in Ukraine. So maybe we still need to take into consideration this history, difficult history. But these countries, they were on Hitler's side, not even on them only. So now it's different configuration. We created a configuration where Italy is our friendly country and Slovakia until lately. We had very good relationship and Romania. Lately, we had a wonderful period of cooperation. So that was during the presidential term of a specific president. So those are countries where presidents can change. So why your position is so firm? Tusk visited Ukraine. Well, we understand all that. Okay, Hungary and Slovakia. Well, today I would like to be completely open. And I don't want to impose my opinion, and I understand that my conclusions might be, incorrect. But as for today, I see Oles Hanchar shared with me that the scariest, the most terrible fights were happening when they came to the Hungarian territory and they were attacking Budapest. So that was horrible. Magyars, they were very cruel here, unlike Romanians. Even though Hitler and Antonescu gave them a descent out of Ukraine, but they were not cruel. But Magyars, they were terribly cruel. We cannot forget that everybody, so the party that comes to power in these countries, they draw history with them. And Antonescu, Horthy, so they become national heroes of those right forces. And with Orban, they refer to Horthy all the time. So you raised an incredibly important topic that is not discussed often. Why? Because we are all, have Stalin, narratives in mind as, something that we still carry it. We need to get rid of it. We are for peace, we are for peace. We need to look in a more realistic way. But they are in European Union, they are in NATO. That's somewhere where we are moving. What is NATO? Well, that's probably a question of a topic for a different discussion. Yeah, NATO is also fragmented, and that poor Rutte. So people here think that if he's general secretary, then he's like Stalin, he's ruling over NATO. No, he's not ruling. He's just running from one client to another and listening to each party and trying to combine those views. So that is a different thing. NATO, I used to say, well, I always said that NATO will not stop at European borders. So when I was in Washington, I still have recordings. And in my previous book, there are these thoughts expressed that NATO will definitely turn into global... No, that NATO may turn into security organization. And look, in all the last NATO sessions, Japan and Australia participate, and these are different, different geographical territories. So then, Baltic countries, we got very strong allies as Finland and Sweden. I spoke in Sweden in military academy. I saw their attitude. So they have so they remember. They do not like Russia. So they are our strong allies. And especially that on that side will be strong fight for Arctic and for Greenland. And now there is a special organization of Scandinavian countries and Baltic countries. This organization is created already, and they are already structured and they are cooperation. So we see that there's doors into NATO or whatever is that, these weird doors. It looks like, but maybe we need to initiate with those who can enter into military union with us. So we need to initiate, and I agree with you that that is the direction. So even officially, Ukraine used to talk about that, and then all that was silenced. So now I think it's possible to say that we are ready for future steps, even if it will be developing NATO countries. So I have slightly different view about the global role of NATO in the future than you. So yeah, now it's under big influence of US. So there was Rammstein and so on. Now it's kind of turning. But everything you said about Europe, the picture is very clear. So it doesn't look like a clear pole now, but let's try to look optimistically at this. So another question is connected to this. So we have this broad picture, this continent of evil, and here it's a kind of union of Western countries that is not fully formed yet, and then this third line of defense close to Japan. So the world is established, everyone is still, no one talks about Africa now, even though it's unclear how the situation will unfold. So we said that it's a continent of evil, and now the thing that unites this country, they are all nuclear countries. In Europe, it's just Britain and France. Well, in Europe, conditionally, so Israel. So at least Israel participates in European football championships. So in some ways it's associated with Europe too. So the question, nuclear weapon, in one case Russia attacks Ukraine, and in 2022, well, we will read about it in memoirs, but as participants of those events mention that possibility of using nuclear weapon is 50%, and this is considered as huge numbers by American strategic researchers. So they developed a lot of different other scenarios of helping Ukraine. So we saw unfolding of conflict right in front of our eyes between India and Pakistan, with using aviation, 125 planes, two nuclear countries. No one is alerted, no one sounds the alarm. Why? So, and also, actually speaking of Israel, they have nuclear weapon, but still, nevertheless, they never even tried to use it, despite the fact that so the enemies were trying to destroy them, just wipe them from the earth. So I know your position that I know your thoughts about peculiarities of weapon. So, but direct question, why such a different attitude towards Russia with nuclear weapon and to China or India with nuclear weapon? And Pakistan, well, I just mean that, the attitude in the world, how the world discusses it. Like, for example, why if Russia expresses some threats of using nuclear weapons, so the whole world talks about it. But there, in those countries, they had thousands of these nuclear heads. No one is interested in that, and no one discusses it. Well, first of all, if we will talk, so today the nuclear conflict between India and Pakistan, so that is, that question is not anymore in in the agenda. So that's a huge relief. So India is growing, their power is growing, ambitions are growing. Look at who is Modi. Read, he was a member of terroristic organization. That is absolutely different from ideology of Indira Gandhi and National Congress of Parties. That is absolutely different force. That is that today put as a goal to turn India as a powerful world force, and that's correct. They have a lot of power with their resources. And on the other side, Pakistan, who is in some way under great influence of China, but from my point of view, again, I will repeat, Russia looks in front of the whole world as tremendously toxic force, tremendously big threat and aggressive force that, with the absence of real economic or military force, can apply nuclear weapon. And I think that, of course, the leadership of these countries such as India and Pakistan, so they have absolutely different level of thinking and the level of responsibility. I think that they fully understand consequences of nuclear war, and they don't have any point, any reason to start it. They control situation, and they do not throw around the threats towards their neighbors, about using nuclear weapon. I think that's an important factor. And again, China, even you remember, even in their projects of cooperation between the countries, so there was a point to never use nuclear weapons. So as they are against, and this is different philosophy, and I think that this is very important factor that also deterrence for Putin. So it restrains Putin as well, because remember, some information from American intelligence forces, you mentioned that there were 50 something nuclear threats from Russia. We never heard that from India or Pakistan, right? So there is a difference, but we don't know who will come in the next generation to power, both in Pakistan and India. We don't know that. But having nuclear weapon, it's a very serious factor for those aventurists, for chauvinists, for people who threaten this world, and for them nuclear weapon is just a subject of their dreams, in order to threaten everyone around and fight everyone around, all their neighbors. But still, I know your position. And so nevertheless, you mentioned before that Ukraine, well, that would be good for Ukraine to have nuclear weapon. Of course, that's not a question for now. But the question is it possible for Ukraine to have mutual nuclear shield together with Europe, where nuclear heads are not on our territory, but we participate in developing it? For example, ballistic missiles that Ukraine can produce as a part of a general European system. Maybe that would be a good step. Well, I want to say that yesterday our books were presented, 5 books, and one of the books was called The Weapon of Doomsday. And that's about a group of officers and nuclear specialists after Russia, opened aggression against Ukraine. They started to work on developing nuclear weapon. Of course, it's impossible now, but that was a moment when, that was possible to do it. So we have some examples when Yanukovych, he sold he sold the stocks of plutonium to America just to have picture with picture. He exchanged it. So that is terrible, but yeah, let's not talk about that. So, your questions. Today, Poland for 3 years already, and actually, I wrote about it. So, Poland asked to join nuclear sharing. That's a program that is spread for a few European countries. Is Great Britain, Germany, Italy, and I think Ireland. Um, where American planes, American bombers with tactic and strategic nuclear charges. So for them to use it together with Germany and England under American control. Poland is begging. They used to have wonderful relationship with the previous leadership of United States. President Duda said few times that Poland wants to have F-35 on their territory. Well, they do have F-35, but he was talking about those F-35 that carry nuclear weapons under control of United States. But everyone understood that in the case of these confrontations, so the decision will need to be very prompt. But they were denied, and they denied again. So now Poland switched to United Kingdom and France, and Macron gave signal. But again, unfortunately, Macron is a very weak president, so all his promises is, yeah. So he promised that he can think about spreading nuclear umbrella over Europe and in particular over Poland. So, in a perspective, if we will become an integrated part, because we are not a part, we didn't become, member of any union with those countries. We think we are, but we do not have any agreements of that kind. Yeah, but who would be open to establish such agreement with Ukraine, Great Britain? Well, but you know that story, right? That we signed two agreements with the same name. One is short and needs certification, and the other one is long, detailed, and it's not subject of ratification. Interesting, I didn't know that. Yeah, as lawyers from the presidential office said, they said, well, that's nothing. It will just lay here, and that will sanctify it as ratified. But the problem is that they forgot about it. They signed agreement for 100 years and forgot about it. But we mentioned here before, together with you, that what Poland is doing. So that could be our realistic, possibility for the future. We need to have a firm conversation with them. So if like Americans now want to decrease their role here, so why? Well, maybe they actually do it, but not really public. But I don't really fully believe it, because we have a lot in words and in documents. You are right. After signing. So maybe it's just probably a couple of countries in Europe with whom we have guarantees of security guarantees. Is Luxembourg? Yeah, it's European memorandum just multiplied by a few countries. That's even more horrible. It's called illusion, when something is done but in real it doesn't exist. Yeah, it's a phantom scene. Yeah, we signed with Luxembourg some agreement about cooperation in the sphere of culture, but but when they used to speak about it, so so they were not taken seriously. It's profanation and imitation, and as a result we were left without any agreement, at least with Lithuania. Could we have agreement at least with Lithuania? No. Wow. That was very possible. That's why I say at least, yeah. I'm really grateful to you. You know better what's happening, and I just want to remind that. Well, I can imagine how it was for the ambassadors to implement that. Those forums. Well, you understand where the finances were sent, and the efforts were dedicated to. So, well, yeah, but the picture is pretty clear about nuclear situation. So, for conclusion of this part of this dialogue, so I would like us to return to those questions. Yeah, that at first I mentioned them, that nobody has answers. If you will not have, we don't have anywhere else to turn to, because I believe that the expert thought of of Western countries now is pretty weak, because they underestimate this situation. So I think Ukrainians can have more realistic view, because, well, of course, we also cannot avoid our own attitude towards the enemy, but if to remove that emotional layer, but the best developments and correct prognosis were done by Ukrainians, not Americans. Where like emptiness, no strategy, no mistakes, so not even Europeans. So I saw something from Japan that was more realistic in terms of analyzing enemies' actions. So now the question arises, so why I draw this line? So from if I would be in the shoes of those countries, I would have listened to Ukraine very attentively, because it's not just an experience of war, but also a we neighbor with Russia for centuries. So we understand the nature of Russia. We understand the empire approach. You mentioned that already. In 1997, when in Washington you said it, and that hit Moscow in their head, and they were trying to remove you from the position. But even though the leadership was pro-Russian, but for some reason, yes, Yeltsin called Kuchma and said that a Ukrainian ambassador in Washington is calling to kill Russians, and I only read to them something from the history. I was having a speech in front of some Ukrainian audience, and there was just one little man sitting there from Russian embassy with Ukrainian surname, Yaremenko or something, and he wrote about it. So he wrote that denunciation, and I was just quoting something from our history, and I acted very correctly, even though I fully understood the role of Russia, but still. And then they called to Yeltsin, and Garbulin called me and said that, yeah, they are saying that and that against you. And I said, well, so and then Gennady Vdovenko suggested for me to become an ambassador in Moscow, and I agreed right away. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, as we discussed with you before. So Alexander Razumkov's role was very serious there, who told President that it will be humiliation of Ukraine, that number one, and we saw those documents, so this is Russian style. So the reaction was correct, even at that time. Those clashes existed. So, but again, taking to the consideration that this Russian nation very good, because there were some illusions, at least I had some illusions, that, with some compromises it's possible, the agreement about friendship, partnership. So even though in Moscow they didn't want to ratify that that agreement, so KGB was against that. So real KGB, well, Zhirinovsky as ex-KGB, or not ex. But then it happened so that it was an illusion. But my question is, for the future, we understand that Russia will not stop. We understand that Ukraine will not be able to carry all that by itself. So we said that we are frontier, but yeah, so Israeli experience, so it's slightly different. So they do not have that huge perimeter as we do. So how it's possible to do it? Maybe some technology and drones. I don't know, maybe in the whole border we will have that scorched earth. So like in Istanbul they said, so Ukrainians need to just retreat back. So where to retreat? So, but the question arises that we will not be able to do by ourselves. Our resources are not enough in order to handle that attack. So when Russian propagandist Lavrov, he said that, oh, they dealt so good with Mongol Tatars, those who raped, and Ivan Grozny was the same. And Lavrov says, look at our experience, we let them come to us, right? How? I mean, what shall we do in this situation? So we are not part of the military union. So we see the resources that we have now. We cannot use all the, all the resources of Ukraine just for defense. What about development? And again, there are different proposed scenarios to, agree to come to terms, neutral position. And again, I want to say that Volodymyr Butkevich already mentioned it here, and it could be interesting for you too. So I was thinking maybe you have something on that matter. So he said here publicly, the topic of neutral position of Ukraine, where did it come from? It came when he got a call from the head of International Association of international law, and he said in 1991 or something that you need to talk about discuss neutral position. He asked like why, as well I believe that this is the topic of the past, of history. And he said, I don't know exactly, but that came from the head office. So, and they didn't know what to do with Ukraine, and they said, okay, just discuss neutral position for now, and then we will see what to do. Neutral position does not fit. So even though they are trying to reanimate Istanbul too. So, and then self-defense, just with our own strengths, that's terrible. We are losing our best people. So what to do? What model to adopt? So we mentioned nuclear shield. That's a good option, but unfortunately now it's kind of hard to see how to do it, how to implement. And so how do you see these future scenarios? I saw that in your book there are like 4 scenarios, 4 possible scenarios. And how do you see this model of the most preferable for Ukraine safety model, security model? Well, I try to act based on general, principles. So there are 3 options. Optimistic, well, it's just Ukrainian dreams. Pessimistic, optimistic is where Babchenko with Israeli machine gun on the German tank drives Red Square in Moscow. But this is Ukrainian dreams about the gold of Polubotko. And then pessimistic scenario. And actually, well, this is very serious option because it's hard to say what can happen. But I think it's 10% possible for pessimistic option, and then the middle option, kind of that I see. So 1 more year. So we always have to remember about those black swans that can fall on Putin's head, not on our heads only. So if there will be no those black swans, then on the front line, that will be there will be I just want to remind you 1953. I was a student at that time. Stalin died, and so the negotiations, because Americans and Koreans and Chinese started, and on the demarcation line, that zone was only 2 kilometers, demilitarized zone. So they established, they put troops there, they stopped shooting, they signed agreement from Chinese like a nation, from Chinese army, American general, and South Korean general. And then what next? President of South Korea, Lee Sen-man, said that I will not sign this because this is betrayal of the interests of South Korea. We were expecting that the whole Korea will be united. We were expecting a return, and the Americans betrayed us. And that agreement is still in action, so draw your conclusions. But in the same time, there are American hard systems there. Yeah, of course, and American troops and British troops. Yeah, at that time it was called United Nations troops, United Nation Corps. Yeah, but we don't have troops. Yeah, we don't have. So if some international mechanisms will be involved, so about this, for coming to mutual understanding between Russia and Ukraine. So, but these direct negotiations that are happening, that's that are happening now is just bluff. It's just I would call it just deception of nations, because, well, you understand. Well, I will allow myself to I think that we cannot underestimate the enemy. So their team, well, I actually mentioned that they have very low positions, but they are afraid of leadership. They cannot make any decisions. They hate us. Yes, of course, but they don't have goal to make any decisions. Yeah, so let me draw the conclusion as follows. So we cannot just remain on our own, even despite the fact that we have huge territories and comparably big human resources that were shortened in the last years, unfortunately, for different reasons. So we need to establish the border, like a shield on the border with Russia. Unfortunately, we do not have, as we have before the Dnieper, we do not have any serious like boundaries, like mountains or big rivers, a part of Dnieper River. So this is still open question. This is a multifactorial question. And there is a lot of unknown. So the position of United States is still uncertain. We see that their position now is very negative for us, but we don't know how it will turn at the end. Position of Europe, even though today it looks pretty positive for Ukraine, but also the fact that they want to end that war, both in Europe and in America. They want, but Russia will just try to break hands and legs for our allies and ours in order to put us on our knees in order for them to reach their goals and turn us. I read somewhere very interesting information that if they will keep the occupied part of Ukraine, so they will immediately recruit 100 to 150,000 of Ukrainians in their Russian army. So you said something that our allies, or something that negotiation with Japan that was more or less okay. I agree with you that there is no adequate understanding of our interests. That's what I want to say. So some time ago I mentioned the question why we do not have our own Brzezinski and our own Kissingers. But Kissinger corrected himself. Yeah, of course. I'm trying to say that why we do not have that scale figures, because we are in ghetto, both in terms of literature, without translations into English, German, without the way to Europe, without people who will support us, lobby our interests there. Without that, nothing will happen. We are sitting there because studying from Soviet Union time, they didn't consider us because for them there was totally different world. So not only in literature and art, but also in politics, we need that. So we have fantastic professionals. We have understanding of the subject whom we are dealing with. But look at our press. Look at our messages. So absolutely any even meaningless analysis of a British or American newspaper, so we publish it next day. But we do not publish our own materials, and this is a problem. We need to think about it. So I understand that we have certain informational possibilities, and also your center does a lot of good job, but I think it's not enough. So if to draw a line under our conversation, so if to speak about some far prognosis, they are pessimistic, and I'm sure that the world is sliding towards World War III. And the other thing that it can unexpectedly move or relocate. And for example, in Sudan, a Russian base is on fire. Today in Polish mass media, I saw it. So where Russian missiles are. Russians want to have a base near Indonesia in Sudan. So there is a kind of so there is like arrangement of forces, and those are very painful problems, and that forces us to think that maybe the war can arise in Pacific region or Indian Ocean region, or in like for example North Korea can attack America, and they already have necessary means, and that will be terrible. So you know what stresses Israel, that's scary. So they discussed that for the first time some old Soviet missile sent by Hussites hit maybe like 1 kilometer from Ben Gurion airport. So now they're analyzing what happened, because they have two horizons of defense. One horizon is the missile was supposed to be caught by the first horizon and destroyed. So but they missed, and then the missile started to land, and then the second shell didn't work either. So now they have a lot of worries, because this primitive technology And primitive terroristic formations can harm Israel so bad. And imagine for Israel, so without Ben Gurion, Israel will be isolated. So, for example, unfortunately, I am pessimistic. And speaking for Ukraine, I think, yeah, by the way, my book's title is Victory Defeat of Ukraine, and we will still talk about it. But I believe that we will still be able to defend our sovereignty, and I think that we still have 5 years in order to make cardinal decisions before a huge battle will start. Thank you. Thank you so much. So you say 5 years, 2029, and I heard other opinions that are the same in time frames. And you said pessimistic. Well, not so pessimistic considering to what we have today. So thank you so much for this conversation, and we appreciate also to those who were able to listen. Yeah, Valeriy Alexeyevich, I just want to ask word and represent. Yes, Yurii Nikolaevich, of course. We will get to the second part, of course. Thank you so much for our discussion. That was very interesting. And after a short break, we will talk about your book. We'll have presentation of your new book by famous Ukrainian politician Yurii Shcherbak. Yeah, but just before we end this discussion, I would like to ask you to allow and to invite our guest, my dear colleague, head of Ukrainian Peace Council, academic Zvorovsky Mikhailo, who is he leads the institute that draws prognosis and incredibly interesting analysis for absolutely in 5 minutes we will continue before that I just wanted to because we have a book presentation, there is publisher and those who support it. So let's first follow the format, and then we will get to that, okay? If it's okay for you. So there is some TV format, and we need to adhere to it. So I believe that so our dear guest, academic Zvorovsky, will not be offended at ours. So I guess we will not be able to have a long break, but just 3 minutes break, and my colleagues will say when we'll be able to continue, right? Okay.